Have you ever found yourself in this situation? You're driving through the suburbs at night, maybe with your family, and you're looking for this new house where you're supposed to be having dinner with a friend at. As you get closer, you start to drive at a snail's pace as you're trying to find the house, and almost instinctively, you turn down the radio. Maybe someone's in the car with you and the conversation just goes quiet because you're all trying to read the house numbers. Has that ever happened to you before? Have you ever wondered, why is that? As if somehow the car radio will affect our ability to see at night? It actually comes down to our ability to focus and give attention. When we turn down the radio, we're actually tuning out our audio input, and instead we're now giving our undivided attention to our visual input, or what we can see. We as humans have a very limited attentional capacity, and when we want to focus on a particular task, we need to give it as much attention as possible. We don't switch the radio channel, we turn it off completely. It's all about the repurposing of attention. And when it comes to our faith, there are times when we need to tune out the things that distract us and repurpose our attention wholly on God. Maybe you're in a position where you're asking God to intervene. Maybe you're praying for spiritual growth or for your friends and family. Maybe you're praying for a revival of faith to encounter God. Maybe you need guidance with an important decision or to break an addiction. Prayer and fasting can produce spiritual breakthroughs. In the Bible, prayer and fasting are commonly seen hand in hand, with prophets and disciples petitioning God for guidance, intervention, and a change of heart. In Daniel 8, we see Daniel in a position of needing wisdom and guidance as he attempts to understand a vision that he had. He even shows how much he has struggled with it in verse 27. It says, "I, Daniel, was worn out. I lay exhausted for several days. Then I got up and went about the king's business. I was appalled by the vision. It was beyond understanding." But in Daniel 9:3, we see him engage in prayer and fasting. "So I turned to the Lord God and pleaded with him in prayer and petition, in fasting and in sackcloth and ashes." At this point, God sends a messenger to help him understand the vision. Daniel 9:22-23. "He instructed me and said to me, 'Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding. As soon as you began to pray, a word went out, which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. Therefore, consider the word and understand the vision.'" Daniel found himself at an impassable point where he needed God to intervene in his situation, where he had to rely on God rather than rely on his own strength. It was in prayer and fasting that he humbled himself and surrendered himself to God. But what is fasting? Fasting is to abstain or to go without something, for example food, for an extended period of time. And when we fast, we are repurposing our attention. We're removing our distractions and focusing on tuning into God. We're putting ourselves in a place of desperation and need, saying that we don't just want God, we need Him. Fasting isn't simply giving up food for a while. Although this is one of the ways, it's primarily about turning off the radio, abstaining from the things in our life that we put before God, and reprioritizing our relationship with Him. But just as with water baptisms, there's nothing special about the water per se. In the same way, going without food isn't the focus either. The fast itself isn't what gives breakthroughs. It is an outward action to represent an inward transformation. To say, "God, this physical hunger is a reminder of how much I spiritually hunger after you." Even Jesus fasted, and in Matthew 4, Jesus fasted for 40 days and was physically empty of food. This occurred right before the start of his public ministry. Moses also fasted for 40 days before receiving the law in Exodus 24:34, and Elijah followed the same example in 1 Kings 19:8. But like we said earlier, fasting is an outward action to represent an inner transformation. It's crucial that when we fast, we do it with a heart directed at pursuing God. In Matthew 6:16-18, Jesus tells us that when we fast, not if, when we fast, do it in a way that others won't notice. Do it in secret. What that means is that our intentions of our fast should be between us and God alone. It's not done to be noticed by others. Fasting isn't just another task to add to the Christian checklist. It is repurposing our attention and our heart towards God. It's not holding ourselves hostage and going on a hunger strike until God gives us what we want. It's humbling ourselves and surrendering ourselves to God and His will. It's a declaration that we need God in our situations and circumstances, and that only by His Spirit will we see breakthrough. Fasting can certainly involve giving up food for a period of time, but it can also be fasting anything that takes up space in your day or space in your heart that could be repurposed towards God. The important thing is that it has to be a meaningful sacrifice. It has to leave a void that you fill with God. Maybe you need to tune out social media or watching TV. Maybe it's one of those weekends out, or even spending your lunch break in prayer and reflection. Maybe it's even something as routine as giving up the morning coffee. It's important to remember that the key is replacing that time you would normally spend doing other things with intentional time seeking God. For me, prayer and fasting has been so impactful. In the times in my life when I've needed breakthrough, I've positioned myself to trust in God by fasting. The times that I would normally spend cooking, I filled with reading my Bible. The times when I was hungry, I prayed. Just on the physical level alone, I noticed that I was spending so much more time in prayer and reading my Bible. Spiritually, I felt closer to God more than ever, to the point where I received words for myself and for others. I will say though that sometimes some of these breakthroughs did not occur in the way that I wanted or expected, but they were a strong reminder that we serve a God who can do the impossible. I often limited what God could do through my own expectations. Like the Israelites, I just wanted God to deal with the problems following me, but He was prepared to part the sea for me to move forward. Don't limit your expectations on what God can do in your circumstance. Pray, fast, and trust that He will make a way. And when deciding what to fast, think about what fills up your free time. What do you find yourself naturally pulled to when you have an empty moment? If you are considering fasting food, please have a conversation with your doctor beforehand. Again, the key is that the sacrifice you make should be exactly that. It's a sacrifice, to intentionally repurpose your attention towards God. And I encourage you to apply this word to your life and fast. Whether it's once a day, a week, a month, whatever it is, make space for God to move and watch the breakthrough come by His Spirit.